Shalom, shalom, daughters of Yah. It is me, Malcolm Marie, your favorite big sister, mentor, and life coach. Today, I want to discuss the Proverbs 31 woman. Let's get into it. Eshes Chayil, Proverbs 31, woman of valor. In chapter 31, verse 10, it begins with a question: who can find such a woman? And from 10 to the end of the chapter, there's different things that she does that are admirable and almost superhuman. It has been a habit or a tradition in on the Sabbath to read Eshes Chayil. I remember in our early days, there was one family where the husband would sing it. Beautiful song. I've seen sisters cry at the Sabbath table because they just felt so unworthy of the recital of that song, whether it was sung with a beautiful voice or it was just read. For centuries, possibly, this woman has eluded us. And as women in the body walking in this way of life, she has become a role model / idol. Role model because we see the good that she does. We see her functionality. And as people, we should always esteem to be so productive, so functional, such a source of blessing for our household. But it can become an idol where this fictitious woman becomes who you are striving to become. And I don't say this to attack anyone who have this image of this Proverbs 31 woman in their mirror or in their desire, because at the end of the day, she is a woman of valor. When we look at the Hebrew word for chayil, it can also be translated as army. This is not a weak woman. This is a woman of force and influence. As women, we should try to be influential and functional in our role. But to try to be this Proverbs 31 woman is a trap. I want to highlight a couple things about the Proverbs 31 woman, the Eshes Chayil. The first thing I want to point out is that this is a poem. Now, it's easy to miss that this is a poem in the English because the poetic elements is seen in the Hebrew. Visit makanmamre.com and look up Proverbs 31. And what you're going to see is that each verse begins with a Hebrew letter. It's an acrostic. If you had read this in the Hebrew, it would have jumped out or been a clue that this is a poem. We treat poems, or we should treat poems, as we would treat parables, which they are used to teach a lesson, right? Poems are beautiful. They use a lot of imagery. They use a lot of metaphors and similes, right? It is a piece of work of expression. And for us to take a poem and to literally apply it to our lives is faulty. It's not chachma, it's not wisdom. Another thing we want to think about is that verse 10 is a question. Who can find her? That alludes to the idea that this woman is rare. She is rare. The third thing I wanted to take a look at is the culture of our ancient ancestors, right? I have a home. I'm the governor of my home, right? My husband is the head, but I govern the home. I make sure I know what food we have, what food we need. I cook, I do laundry, I make sure bills are paid. I run my husband's house. That's my job. In ancient days, where it was a more agrarian culture, there's no way one woman could have done that. Women and men had help. They had servants to help them with their task. Where it says that she goes to the ships, right, to sell her merchandise, we think that she literally did that, and she could have. But more than likely, what she did was send one of her servants to the merchant ships. When you send someone on your behalf, they can take the pronoun of yourself. When Bilhah and Zilpah had babies were surrogates for Leah and Rachel, they didn't say, my handmaid have brought forth children. They said that they brought forth children, but they didn't. They did because these women were subjected to them. So when we think about who's doing all these things in Proverbs 31, be mindful that she had, probably more than likely, she had a staff of women. If we even look down in the verses, lower down in the verses, it talks about how she shared things to her handmaidens. Let's take a look at verse 15. It says, she rises also while it is yet night, gives food to her household and portions for her servant girls. She had a staff, right? Let's go up a little bit. Let's take a look at verse 14. She is like the merchant ships, right? She brings her bread from afar. She's not literally, and that's another clue that this is poetry, because that is called a simile. When we see the words when we use words like as or like, do we think that she's planting a vineyard by herself in verse 16? When it says in verse 18 that her lamp doesn't go out by night, do we think that she's up all night? So when does she sleep? When does she rest? I'm just highlighting these points to kind of bring to our realization that this woman of valor, this Eshes Chayil, is not based on an actual woman that we're gleaning this wisdom from. We're supposed to be using it as a tool, right? We step back, we pan out, and we see what is all these verses telling me. And it could be summed up in one of the last verses. In verse 30, it says, charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears Yahweh, she shall be praised, right? This is all about how a woman functions when she fears Yahweh. And how does she do that? She does that by being functional. She does that by being a productive person, whatever that might look like. Because I know for me, I'm not trying to gather flax. That's not how I serve my home or my family. So this woman of valor, I want us to put her in her proper place of being functional and fearing Yahweh, and to shift our eyes off of her and to shift our eyes onto Mashiach, because he's the standard. And that's why I said this woman of valor, this Eshes Chayil woman, if not put in her proper place, can become an idol, because now we're striving to be this woman. We're striving for our husbands and our children to see us as this Eshes Chayil, where what we're supposed to be striving for is to be like Mashiach, right? To have the mind of Mashiach, to have the heart, to have the character, to bring forth the fruit of the Spirit, right? We bring forth the fruit of the Spirit because we have been gifted the Ruach HaKodesh by belief in Yahushua HaMashiach. And as the Ruach HaKodesh does its work inside of us, we bring forth fruit. And that should be love and patience and kindness and long-suffering and gentleness and joy. This woman as functional as she is, and as much as we should be learning about being productive and being a help to our homes and our families and those around us, because this woman is also a woman who has wisdom on her tongue. But don't let her be your standard of your womanhood, of your value, because your value doesn't lie in the fact that you wake up early or stay up late or you're sewing clothes by hand. If you do all those things, that's fine, that's good, but that is not where your value comes from. Your value comes from being a daughter of Yah. That's it. Nothing can add to that, and nothing can take away from that. When we did our self-esteem workshop earlier this year, and even when I created that self-esteem journal, it was the whole thing behind it is for us to see ourselves as a daughter of Yah. One of the main exercises we did in the journal and at the workshop was creating our own affirmations, which reflected how the Father sees us, reflects what the Word says about us. And so we need to get back to the basic building blocks of understanding who we are, who you are. And if you got to look in that mirror every day and say, I'm a daughter of Yah and he loves me unconditionally, then that's exactly what you do. And you know that your value doesn't rest in how other people see you, but your value rests in that how the Messiah sees you. And your goal isn't a woman that even if she was real, guess what? She's dead. She no longer exists. But we strive to be like our Mashiach, who is alive, who has resurrected and ascended. And we are striving to be like him. Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, follow me as I follow Messiah. The Messiah is our goal. When Peter was walking on water, he was able to walk on water as long as he kept his eyes on Yahushua. Dismantle the idol in your mind of this woman. And again, I'm not saying to discard Proverbs 31. Put it in its proper place. It should be edifying, not a stumbling block. I pray for your peace in this area. As always, it is me, Malcolm Marie, your favorite big sister, mentor, and life coach. Shalom, Queens.